Good evening. My name is Bob Connors. It's 7 p.m. and I'd like to call the April 18th meeting of the Newbury Conservation Commission to order. Sam, can you read the remote open meeting law preamble and take a roll call of the members present? Is there feedback coming in from me?
There is. Hold on one second. It looks like we have some people who were not muted. Does that sound better?
Yeah, how do I sound now? I'm not getting
Perfect.
feedback.
Yeah,
now. Is that okay? Okay.
All
great.
right. As a preliminary matter, my name is Smith Holt, Town Staff Conservation Agent for the Newbury Conservation Commission. Permit me to confirm that all members are present and can hear me. Conservation Commission members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Bob Connors.
Yes.
Brad Duffin.
Present.
Diane O'Brien.
Yep.
Mary Rimmer.
Here.
Peter Pecos.
Yes.
And we do not have TJ tonight. All right, good evening. This April 18th, 2023 open meeting of the Newbury Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely with the act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, which extends the governor's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law until March 31st, 2025. This order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location and allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that attendees are participating by video and/or telephone conference, and the recording will be available on the Newbury Access YouTube channel. Meeting materials were provided to Commission members prior to the meeting for review and were posted on the Conservation Commission webpage for public access. Before we turn to the first item on the agenda, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. Proponents will be given 10 minutes to present. More time may be allowed at the discretion of the chair. After they conclude their remarks, we will go down the list of commission members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, for all attendees except commission members and staff, please remember to mute your computer using the mute button or your phone using *6 to toggle mute and unmute when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Please be aware that video participants can see you and that you should take care not to screen share your computer unless you have been allowed to do so. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. For any responses, please wait until the floor is yielded to you and state your name before speaking. If commission members wish to engage in discussion with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself when you wish to speak. There will be an opportunity for public comment and questions during public hearings. After commission members have spoken, we will afford the public an opportunity to comment and/or ask questions as follows. I will seek questions and comments at the appropriate time through the Zoom raise hand function. For video conference participants, to raise your hand, hover over the bottom of the Zoom window below the photo gallery and click on the yellow hand that appears. If you don't see a yellow hand, click on the participants button. The list of participants will open and display on the right. At the bottom of this participant area, you will see an option to click on a raise hand button. Please ensure your name is fully and correctly displayed on the participant list. You may rename yourself by using the More function next to your name. For telephone participants, to raise your hand in a Zoom meeting, hit *9 on your phone's keypad. We will then allow questions and comments from members of the public who have raised their hands in the order in which they appear listed on my screen based on when the function was selected. Each participant will be called upon to provide their name and address or affiliation and will be afforded 3 minutes to make comments. More time may be allowed at the discretion of the chair. Proponent or commission members will have the opportunity to reply as needed. Your hand will be lowered when you have been given the floor for your questions. We will then continue down the list of those in the raise hand column and again afford time for responses as needed. All participants are reminded that only matters which fall into the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission may be discussed. The chat feature has been disabled for this meeting. Everyone is expected to conduct themselves in the same manner they would in an in-person meeting. Disruptions that impede operations of this commission will be addressed once by the chair and should be acknowledged by the disruptor. Further disruptions may result in complete removal from the meeting with no readmittance. Vulgar or obscene actions or comments will result in immediate removal from the meeting with no readmittance. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote.
Well, thank you, Sam. All right, upcoming meeting dates, May 2nd and May 16th. Okay, approval of meeting minutes for April 4th, 2023. Team, why don't we take a minute and review those and see if we have any comments, concerns, or corrections?
We don't have any.
I couldn't.
I apologize. I did not have a chance to get to them between all of the banana-ness of last week and being in Vermont this week.
Yeah. No problem at all. All right, well, let's move on to the first order of business. Enforcement order for 22 Annapolis Way. Administrative enforcement order issued for violation of negative determination of applicability for upward expansion over a portion of existing structure. Sam, can you give us an overview on this one?
Yes. So back in October last year, Tom Hughes did the RDA for this project. It was originally for an upward expansion on the front entryway for the first floor. It was addition of a second floor on top of that. We had a report that while the work was ongoing, the 3 walls of the entryway were completely removed, leaving just the foundation in place, which was beyond the scope of what was approved under the RDA. I did go out and issue the administrative enforcement order to stop work, and I spoke with the contractor who was doing the work, who noted that the walls were in bad condition and needed to be removed in order to make the completed work be structurally sound. In addition to that work being beyond the scope of what was originally approved, there was some very, very minor disturbance, I guess, to the dune area across the street. They were parking some trucks across the street, which was, they were given permission by the property owner, but it's an area that's not typically used for parking on a regular basis. And the only real disturbance was some tire tracks that were left behind from the vehicles out there. And there were some photos of that I added to the Dropbox for everybody. But there was no real disturbance of any vegetation or anything. Other than that and the walls coming down, everything else was being done appropriately. All of the staging and everything was in areas where it was supposed to be.
Yep. Sam, one question. Has the building commissioner or zoning enforcement officer for the town determined that there's no further review of the permit for 22 Annapolis Way? Is Peter all set on this?
I am not sure about that.
Okay.
But I don't know if the contractor spoke with him or not.
Okay. Well, why don't I stop there? Do we have someone for the property owners that is present?
Yes.
And if you could.
Evening. My name is Attorney Colleen Hayes. I'm kind of straddling 2 Zooms right now with Doug, who's on another Zoom. So I can try to punt this, or if you wanted to go to the next discussion note and then come back to us, Doug should be available.
Yeah, certainly. If that.
I know Tom Hughes is not available. He is under the weather. So he's not able to meet the meeting this evening.
Okay. All right, well, why don't we do this? Let's circle back. We have a couple of public hearings. You want us to put you just at the tail end of the agenda?
I think he's going to be finishing up. Doug, do you think? I would say, I don't know, maybe after you get through the Governor's Academy hearing, we should be ready.
Okay. All right. Well, team, why don't we do this? Why don't we just, we'll put this on hold and we'll come back to it. And we'll move on to the next matter. All right. Okay, next matter is another enforcement order regarding 18 Fordham Way Blue Hotel. Sam, can you provide an overview on this matter?
Yes. So for this one, I received a report. This one actually came in from Mass Autobahn. They noted that Last Monday, they observed some tire tracks in the sand on the beach. And then on Thursday, I got another follow-up email from them that their field crew had seen a staircase being constructed on the beach. I went out last Thursday to chat with, I originally caught up with somebody in the office, and he noted that the staircase was previously existing. It was just being replaced. And he wasn't sure about the tire tracks. As I was getting ready to leave, I caught up with the owner, and he again noted that the staircase was being replaced. It was something that was previously existing. It does appear to have been, it's being replaced in the same location. And he also noted that the tire tracks were related to that. They needed to have some machinery go out to remove the existing staircase because it was partially buried in the sand. I issued a notice of violation as opposed to an enforcement order because it did appear that it was something that could have been permitted, and I kind of wanted to get your input on everything before we moved on. The main issue with this is that typically something like that, even where it's a previously existing structure, having it be replaced, especially on the beachfront like that, would typically have gone through some sort of process with us. And the other issue is that it's in priority habitat and it's in a nesting area that Mass Audubon is monitoring. And typically in priority habitat areas, we wouldn't be allowing construction between April 1st and August 31st, because that is the shorebird nesting season. That's a typical condition that we put on construction projects on the beachfront where priority habitat is located. And that's something that usually comes down through natural heritage. They are the ones that when stuff gets filed through them, they come back with that condition added to pretty much everything.
Okay. Yeah, I had a chance to stop by there today, and it's pretty common on the island. I think the annual replacement or removal or reinstall of stairs is it is similar to the start of spring out here. Everyone takes the stairs off because of winter storms and what have you. So Sam, I was out there today. I didn't see any fencing or signs directly in front of the property. So there's not a nest directly in front of it, but there's one in the immediate area. Is that the case?
Yeah.
I didn't see.
I honestly, I don't know if I didn't see any fencing or anything out there either. Right. That the Mass Audubon they seek permission. They won't put any fencing or any signage out on people's property without permission. Typically, they usually get in touch with property owners. The only place that they really put stuff out without permission is on public property. So on like the town-owned beach area, because they're contracted through the town as well. Right. So I don't know if they maybe didn't get permission from the property owner. He might be able to shed some light on that. But if they didn't get permission and there are nests out there, they may still, take a walk by just to check on the nest sites. But I don't know if there is any fencing or anything out there as far as I'm aware, but they are that whole area is entirely in priority habitat. Okay. So regardless of whether there's fencing out there, it's still a jurisdictional area for both the, being on the beachfront, barrier beach, coastal dune, that whole deal, as well as natural heritage priority habitat.
Okay. Does the property owner have a representative that wants to address the matter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Connors and Ms. Holt. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but this is Rob Ciampetti. I'm one of the partners at Liberty Law and Title, and I have the pleasure of working with Mr. Ryan Guthrie, one of the owners, as you well know, of Island Blue LLC. that operates under Blue, the Inn on the Beach, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I want to thank you for all of this this tireless work. I know it goes into 7 p.m. evening meetings, but I had over the weekend, of course, this was brought to my attention. I see Ryan Guthrie is logged on as well, and I suspect you see him too. This, obviously escalated and percolated instantly to the immediate attention, as it should, to the owners of the property. As I think Chairman Connors, you may know, and I suspect the rest of the commission and Ms. Holt also well know, that part of Plum Island, like most of Plum Island, is an organism that inhales and exhales on an annual, and sometimes more frequently than merely an annual basis. The sand accretes and erodes, and like most structures, temporary, permanent, and otherwise, there's a change almost monthly. Not any exception to that are these staircases that, as I think Ms. Holt pointed out, Mr. Chairman, correctly, they had been existing for some time. As I think the commission well knows, they were there during the Geiger ownership period, and then from 2016 thereafter. They are all temporary structures that are posted down onto the stone that is below, sometimes exposed, sometimes otherwise. And I think Mr. Guthrie can certainly go into more detail. These are designed to be lag bolted temporary structures that are lifted off and lifted back on each season as the circumstances allow. And I think, as Ms. Holt pointed out, in this circumstance, due to inordinate accretion from February and other storms, though we didn't have much snow, we had plenty of nor'easters. Much of the previously existing aluminum staircase and wooden PT platform structure had been buried. In some cases, the second entire tier of that pre-existing structure was buried, and there had to be some assistance to hoist those out and pull those into the parking lot. The plan was always to do no more than keep them in place and keep them accessible. And I think in this instance, what had happened is Mr. Guthrie and his team, perhaps they had put this temporary stair structure back in place where the old one was, in the same tier, two-tier structure, and started to do that. I believe that, and certainly with great respect and due deference to the priority habitat and the timing of that, as well as this commission and the governance of the environmental regulations that protect this, this dune resource area and this coastal fragile resource area. Mr. Guthrie, his family, who own this property and operated it as a family business, have always been a steward of the sensitivity of this property. They want nothing more than to continue to reflect and project that brand, and they are heart sunk at the notion that that a document that has the word violation on it has their name on it, but they recognize and certainly hearken to that, and they want to come before this commission. And I was happy to try to assist Mr. Guthrie and his family in sort of navigating whatever this commission and Mr. Chair you feel are, along with Ms. Holt, are the appropriate next steps. They want to do no more than to continue to be a responsible, thoughtful, and sensitive steward and member of that fragile resource area, and live, operate, and work in harmony with not only the pristine habitat, the other stakeholders, both federal and state, as well as, of course, this commission, and I think the common interests of us all in trying to live in harmony and protect those resources. So whatever, Mr. Chair, you and the commission and Ms. Holt feel is the appropriate next step, I'm simply here as a sort of an advocate and a steward for Mr. Guthrie and his family to help them navigate whatever you determine might be next. And I thank you for your indulgence in this time.
Yeah, so one question before I open it up to the members. So it sounds like the existing stairs, they weren't removed, but they were being repaired. That whatever was currently there, although partially buried, you were repairing those or replacing those with a set of stairways that would provide access to the beach in the exact location they've always been.
In fact, that's exactly correct, Mr. Chair. It's the exact same, everything down to the rake angle and pitch of the stairs, almost representative board for board. This material is you know, is like everything in the world, you know, it is, it's subject to the degradation of just time and erosion, and no better is there an example of that than on Plum Island after a winter. But they were replacing and repairing those existing elements exactly in the same place with no more element and no more structure and no more anchorage or permanence than had always existed. In fact, the word permanence almost has no place here, other than how the sand accretes around these otherwise temporary posts. These are designed to be there until they fall down or become unsafe.
Okay, well, why don't I open the questions up to the members? Mary, any questions at this point?
I just wanted to point out that this is on a primary frontal dune and in the velocity zone. So it certainly should have required a filing with the commission, which we know. It's a little bit hard to tell from the old photos, but it looks like it's, you know, it's similar. The concern would be in the construction and whether the construction meets meets current standards for stairways. One, that, you know, it being breakaway, because you are in a velocity zone, that it has to be a breakaway structure, and the steps part of it, not necessarily the landing, although that's also in a velocity zone. And also, you know, not having a chance to look at it, we don't know what kind of footings they are, whether they were compliant footings, and whether or not there was an opportunity to, you know, raise this higher to provide better accommodation for the migrating dune. It's pretty low profile in the photographs that you've provided, and I think given the current site conditions, it might have been warranted to be constructed a little bit differently than it was. So with all of that in mind, and with the, you know, I would suggest that we at least require some sort of after the fact filing so that we have a record of this structure and what, you know, what it consists of, how it was constructed, what's the elevation above the dune, you know, that we would normally require for this kind of a structure. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Pete, any questions on this one?
I don't have any additional questions at this time. Thanks.
I'll circle back, Pete, after everyone, just to double check with everyone. Brad, what are your thoughts?
Good.
Any questions?
I'm good. Pretty straightforward.
Okay, Diane, any questions?
Did you say that there was the machinery that's used on the beach to put this up and down as the years go by?
Through the chair, I'm happy to answer Ms. O'Brien.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Cummins. Ms. O'Brien, actually, my understanding, and of course we can defer and simply ask Mr. Guthrie, who's here as well. My understanding is that from season to season, the accretion of sand will all but bury, in some cases, entomb the structure, such that mechanical assistance is needed to just simply hoist it out. And if I can add just some additional color to the detail, there is no permanent anchorage, or the structure itself is designed by lag bolt to be breakaway, and oftentimes does break away and is found somewhere down, you know, toward Winger shape perhaps. But the structure in this instance is designed to sit and rest upon gravity alone, with the backfill of the sand as it accretes and erodes season over season, just simply posted down in the variant based on the rocks that are underneath that sand. So I hope that, I'm not sure if that answers your question, Ms. O'Brien, but I certainly can defer to Mr. Guthrie, who can speak to it further, but that's my understanding.
Well, my thought was just at some point it had been approved as a temporary structure that's supposed to be taken in and out, or it's left there. And then the machinery comes in each year or like to fix it. I'm just trying to figure out if there's machinery, or is it just like dragged away, or
it's usually, and again, through the with your indulgence, Mr. Chair, through the chair, I'll say we have submitted some photos and Ms. Holt, I don't know if you're able to share your screen on the photos. There's one historic photo that goes back to pre-2016. It's a Geiger ownership era photo. And it's an aerial shot. And this photo is interesting because it depicts, you know, what is very fresh, clearly some sort of PT, 3 separate structures of stairs that are two-tier stairs. There's a landing, a rake angle to a landing, then a rake angle to grade. And there are three of them, although there are only two that have been during the ownership of the Guthries and their operation. This photo depicts the placement of the three original staircases. In this instance, the northernmost staircase that's in front of the blue bungalow or the blue cottage, which is to the upper rightmost of the photo, that set of PT stairs, that has been abandoned in favor of only two during the historical operation of the Guthries. And those are the two southernmost examples. The middle one of which is the one in question that's been replaced. The southern one of which is actually cocooned in sand currently. So Ms. O'Brien, your question was, do they need equipment every year? The answer is not every year, just years of great sand accretion when the stairs are so buried that hand shoveling and sort of, manpower, person power isn't enough. So they need some mechanical assistance. This was one of those years.
So previously there was an approval at some point in the past to do this? I guess that's my question. Does anybody know that?
I don't,
Yeah, Diane, let me chime in. I've been out here since 1979, and Walton's Hotel was there prior to the Geiger family buying it. And these stairs have been in place since 1979. If that helps. So just being out here, living on the beach, it is very common that these stairs, I think, as the attorney mentioned, they're basically temporary in nature. They're put down to be able to get from one elevation to another, and many times they are just taken out. That the platforms would be left up in the upper part of the property, and the stairs would be removed because of, as was mentioned, either accretion or erosion, or one wave, strong wave activity would remove them. So they've been pre-existing from my recollection to at least 1979. But I think we get two issues here today. I think one is we're after April 1st, so we have a concern about the habitat and nesting. It appears not to be directly in front. Have any when do the plovers fledge? What's the time frame? I'm just curious. It's usually towards the end of April.
No. When do they nest, or when do they fly away?
Yeah, no. Well, when do they? Yeah. When do we have to worry about the chicks actually being born?
Now through June.
Okay.
And
Okay,
typically the construction restriction goes through August 31st.
Sam, please, everyone needs to go through the chair on comments. So Mary, thank you. So for me, it seems like we've got two issues. One, there's an existing platform, and that I'm assuming that the property owners would like to complete. And two, how is that possible to be? How can we do that now, considering that it's the nesting season? Is there an opportunity to actually hire a plover warden? What is this, about a day's work to complete the stairs?
Mr. Chair, I'll defer to Mr. Guthrie through the chair to address that.
Yep, please, Mr. Guthrie. What you're on mute. You're on mute. If you're.
It's approximately a 3 to 4 day construction timetable to get everything set and in place, but it could potentially be quicker on the second set of stairs. We already have a platform anchored there, so it could likely be 2 days.
Okay.
Sorry.
Listen, everyone. Are we having a feedback problem again here? Is everyone on mute? All comments go through the chairs. Mary, I think you brought up a good point that one, any work that's been done and an after the fact filing would seem to be in order, for one. Two, if the owners wanted to get the second set of stairs in, and I get it, that's, they're trying to maintain existing temporary stairs. What is the likelihood of, and Mary, I'm actually asking you this question, to secure a plover warden during that 3-day period, so that we're protecting the nesting area while these stairs are being put in. Mary, what's your thoughts?
Yeah,
on
so
that?
I mean, it's not as simple as that, because if there's a plover warden and plovers show up, you have to stop work. So that's what the plover warden does, is they don't try to make sure you can continue work. It's so you can make sure that the birds can nest where they want to nest. So normally that has to be a person that's approved, by Natural Heritage through their process. So there's a couple things that are going on here. And so there's existing work that's been done without a permit. I understand it's replacement of an existing structure. And there's additional work that's proposed to be done as well. And I guess my concern is that if the design of these results in them being frequently buried and it requires damage to the dune to remove them annually, then there's something wrong with the design. So I think that, at making a filing and having an opportunity to look at these structures and make sure that they're going to be designed in a way that they can be more easily removed, so that you don't end up having to have dune damage every time they're removed. That's where I'm coming from on this one. So
Okay.
if they need emergency steps, for public access, safe access or something like that, I can understand having an emergency certificate or something for some kind of temporary access. We have the opportunity to do that. But whatever they build now, if they do submit a filing, it's possible that could be revised upon further review. So that's something else also to be considered.
So Mary, I mean, I think at a minimum, the owners would want to submit an RDA after the fact, if for anything, for next year. So we don't have a repeat of this. And then we can incorporate the notification of the limitations of when this could be done. So I guess, Mr. Guthrie, would you be interested in contracting the services of an approved plover warden to get the second set of stairs in, because you need the egress and access to the beach, knowing full well that if you have an issue, you could be stopped in the middle of it because of nesting? Mr. Guthrie, you're on mute.
Yes, I would. We would like to do that. We definitely want to see if we can get them accomplished, and if that involves having a warden out there, understanding the risk that we could be stopped, then I think we'd like to take that chance to get that done.
Okay, Pete, I see. Go ahead, Pete. Go ahead.
Yes, thanks very much, Bob. So the question around my head is, would another design be more appropriate? Would a Moby mat work in something like this? You roll it down, and then you roll it back up. You don't have to worry about high velocity. It's an easy transition. It doesn't impact things too much. Just a thought.
The steepness of the grades over there because of the elevations is okay. So Sam, that is the stairs that have been replaced.
Yes, and I believe now they go over this rock wall, I guess. I'm hesitant to call it a wall. It's not really this wall stone structure thing. They go over this, so I don't know that Moby mats would work without removing sections of the stone, which I can imagine they don't want to do. as I believe these were installed to provide some sort of fortification to the dune.
Provide lateral support to the property.
Right. So I don't know, without removing rocks, I don't know that they would be able to put Moby mats in instead.
Okay.
Thanks.
Let me go around again. Brad, any follow-up questions on your part? You're on mute, Brad, if you have any.
No, Mr. Chair. It, as stated earlier, it's pretty straightforward to me.
Okay. Diane, how about yourself?
No.
Okay. So let me do a recap. I guess we have the option of issuing an emergency certificate to allow the install of the other set of stairs with the condition that a approved piping plover warden or whatever appropriate warden would be engaged, and that the property owner then would, after the fact, submit an RDA as a first step on this matter, so that we can look at it and determine what we should do with that, or if it qualifies for an RDA for these steps being put in and removed on an annual basis. So I'm going to stop there. Pete, does that sound like a plan?
It does.
Okay. Brad?
It does.
Diane?
Sounds good.
Okay, Mary, your thoughts on that? I mean,
yeah, just the terms of an emergency certificate require that the work be done within a certain number of hours after issuance, so that it's actually an emergency. So I think it's either 48 or 72 hours. So there's not a lot of time to get it done. And if
actually,
you're going to require a plover monitor, I don't know how long it's going to take to get somebody on board to do that. So there's a time constraint for an emergency certificate. It also has to be submitted to DEP. So
yeah. Okay, so Mr. Ciampetti, you've heard the options being discussed. We can go the route of an emergency certificate. We can consider the route of emergency certificate with appropriate monitoring for nesting. Mary, for some reason, I'm thinking that the emergency certs are 7 days, or it wasn't quite that short a time, because we've had those out on the island before when we've had emergencies with houses that have been, and they weren't limited. It wasn't in hours or a couple of days. It seems to be longer, as I recall. Sam, could you check that for us, Sam?
I believe that my understanding for emergency certificates is that you have 72 hours to do the work, but I believe that within 30 days, you have to come in to get after the fact approval for it. So the emergency certificate is intended for like, I think the last one that the commission issued a long time ago was after a storm. It was issued to Georgie Porgy's. They had a footing that got basically bashed out from underneath the decking, underneath the structure. And they got an emergency certificate issued to stabilize it, but within 30 days, they had to come in for an after the fact filing to get that all covered under the appropriate permit type.
Okay. All right. So if we go the emergency cert route, there is a set time limit that you need to coordinate getting your monitoring and your contractors to perform within the limitations of that time limit. The other opportunity would be do nothing, come in with an RDA, and see where that goes. Mary, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just pulled up the emergency form and cert form, and it's 30 days. Yeah, I did the same thing. They changed the form, so it's now you have 30 days to do the work.
Okay,
I think that we'd want to tighten that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Possible. Yeah.
I think having the monitor there, that's not going to be inexpensive, certainly.
Yeah.
But why don't we do the emergency cert, and we could limit it to 7 business days. I think that's the maximum amount of time that they should be able to get that done. Just thinking of weather, because once it issues, weather is going to be a factor.
And if I might, Mr. Chair, is it 7 days? And this is really more of a logistics question. Is it 7 days upon securing the plover monitor or the plover warden? Because I'll feign my own inexperience. I've never been involved in sort of the mechanics of how much time it takes to get someone on board, but I'm hoping that that can be quick, and you know, maybe that's a foolish hope, but I can tell you that the part that Mr. Guthrie controls will be as expedient and efficient and sensitive as it can be for all the obvious reasons. But I'd be interested to hear what anyone else knows.
Yeah,
about
my understanding is the emergency cert would be issued by the agent,
right.
And that could be coordinated directly with Mr. Guthrie.
Okay.
I think what we're doing is setting the guidelines for Sam on what would be acceptable with the parameters that we would feel comfortable doing an emergency cert, so you could at least get your stairs in place.
Mr. Guthrie and his family are very, they would be more than willing to abide by those limitations, and I appreciate, I'm sure he does as well, the opportunity to work sensitively within that guideline.
Okay, so 7 business days is adequate time to perform this work, even allowing for weather. Contractors work in the rain, they tell me.
Mr. Guthrie, if you want to just give us a thumbs up if that works for you.
I see a big smile on his face.
I see a big smile on
his face. So
yeah, contractors, they love working in the rain. Yeah, so hopefully, I think 7 days is appropriate. Obviously, if it's torrential downpours for an extended period of time, then it may not be able to be achieved in 7 days. But with good weather, 7 days should be plenty.
Okay.
Very good.
So team, it seems to me what we could do is we have an enforcement order in place, Sam?
We have a notice of violation in place. So that's just the notice of violation is a form that I created to essentially as a local level of an enforcement order, just to say, hey, you need to come in and talk to the commission about this. I think something might be amiss here. So it's not a full enforcement order.
Okay. So when someone voluntarily wants to work with you and stop what they're doing and then appear before the commission to get guidance, that's the process you've been using.
Sort of, yeah.
Okay. All right. So 7 days of construction, business days, monitoring during every day that construction is underway. And within 30 days, do an after the fact report showing before and after pitches. And Mary, what else would you like to add to that?
And a filing, and after the fact filing so that there's some authorization for these structures so that we can have some conditions on how they're managed.
Okay.
Sure.
So RDA
by
filing?
A certain date.
Okay.
Yeah, an RDA I think would be fine. And if we provide them with, I don't know, a month or 2 months or something to submit that information, that would be, I think we should put a timetable on it.
So 30 days after you complete, give us an after the fact status report that work is complete. We've had no incidental takes, obviously. And within 60 days, file an RDA so that you don't have to go through this. You'll be on the right track, Mr. Guthrie, in the future. And what we'll do is we'll make sure that the conditions limit the period of time so you're not dealing with birds during the season. Brad, any comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, my suggestion would be to not start the clock until we have a date as to when the plover monitor can be secured, because we don't know or I don't know, and it sounds like Mr. Ciampetti doesn't know, what the process or the timetable is for the securing a plover monitor. I was out at the beach this morning, and there were 2 plover monitors down in the Newburyport end of the beach. So I know they're around, but I don't know what the process is to secure a dedicated individual or group of individuals to monitor this work. So I think it's only fair that the clock doesn't start until we have a date that's secured. And I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that we leave that up to the conservation agent to monitor and help receive the information from Mr. Guthrie.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you.
was the,
Thank
that
you,
was
Mr.
the,
Chair.
that was the thought, Brad, which is have Mr. Guthrie work with Sam, so when he's ready to go, she will be the one issuing the emergency cert with the conditions that we've set. And upon completion, do we want to limit 60 days to submittal of an RDA and after the fact pictures and all of that?
Sounds fair to me.
Okay, Mary, are you good with that?
Yeah, I would just add that sooner is better.
Yeah.
More plovers will be showing up. So
no,
the sooner you can get it done, the better will be, or you will have a problem. So
I would think Mr. Guthrie would like to have it done before April 1st. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, I'm going to go around. Let's just see, Pete, does that sound like a plan for you?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. Brad, you're good?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Diane?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, Sam, what do you need from us?
So I just want to make sure that I have this right. I made a note for myself. Basically, don't issue the emergency cert until Mr. Guthrie has the monitor. I would say even the monitor and the contractor is lined up for a certain time frame, and then issue the emergency cert for the date that they are both lined up to start. Correct. To give that 7 days, and then within 30 days post-construction photos and report within 60 days after the fact filing. Right? Correct.
Yep.
Okay.
That's correct. Do you need any action from us, Sam, where it's an emergency cert? I think this is more guidance at this point for you than.
Yes, I don't think emergency certs have to be ratified by the commission. No. I believe that's something that it has to be signed by the local official, which would be me.
You. Right. Okay. All right. Well, Mr. Guthrie, Mr. Ciampetti, I think you have a game plan, and good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, and thank you, Ms. Holt. Have a good evening. Mr. Guthrie will coordinate Sam with you, and I'll stay involved, and we'll get the RDA and all the corresponding cover sheet and site visit authorization for the commission all on board, and we'll work within that timeline. So thank you all for your time this evening and for your service.
Okay, great. All right, I see Mr. Duchesne's, looks like he's available. With the permission of the commission, why don't we go back to the matter of 22 Annapolis Way?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, commission, good evening, and thank you for your patience with Mr. Hughes being under the weather and I having another meeting. We've been struggling with our timing here, but thank you. I appreciate your patience. So here this evening representing Mr. Stott, as I understand, there was an enforcement order issued. I don't know why, but it seems that my clients have had some missteps lately, and I apologize. But as I think the commission understands, Mr. Stott, you did issue an RDA or an RD that established the limit of work, and that did include making some modifications to that first floor porch. Although, as we see, when they were taking it apart to reconstruct it, there was more rot than they thought. And so I think a zealous contractor, once again, just said it would be easier to rebuild it than to try and fix it. And he did so. Certainly should have notified the building inspector immediately, but didn't. However, I do understand that Mr. Hughes did send me a message today that he had gone out and inspected the property and that there wasn't any, didn't seem to be any damage resulting from the change in the scope of work. He mentioned to me that the change did not limit the scope of work. They didn't go outside the scope of work. Again, the RDA, when the RDA or the EA was issued, we had provided the board or the commission information that the front porch was going to be modified, just not to the extent that it was, but we did not change the limit of work. We didn't change the materials or equipment that was needed to do it. There was actually no physical impacts to the dune or the surrounding area as a result of the change. And so I guess I'm here this evening to find out what the board, what further information the board needs to provide us, and you know, and to discuss what the board wants to do in terms of the enforcement order. I do know you have an option of not ratifying it, which because there was no alteration in the dunes, or you could amend it to allow the work to continue, provided we meet whatever conditions you'd like to add on to this project. Certainly a requirement that we keep the fencing, which is delineating the work area. We keep that in good order and good condition, and whatever other provisions the commission would want. But again, fortunately, while we had a change in the method and methodology of the work, as I understand, there were no negative impacts to the dune or the surrounding area. So whatever the board feels, the commission feels necessary, my client wants to make sure that you're comfortable and that he can continue on.
Okay, thank you. Sam gave a quick overview of this. The commission is quickly learning that whenever you open a structure on Plum Island, expect the worst. So team, we have an enforcement order in place. What I'm going to suggest, the one concern I have is, I think it's important in the future that the description of the work be as inclusive as it possibly can be. We would probably still have approved this regardless if they were moving the whole structure. The parking across the street and the minimal damage to the dune. What I'm going to suggest, so we can resolve this tonight, is ratify the enforcement order. And I would just add as one condition, the condition number 2 that we used on 20 Northern Boulevard, which basically states that 30 days after completion of the construction, the agent would go out and make a determination if any further action was required. And if so, we had that spelled out. Mr. Duchesne, you had actually crafted that. So that would be my suggestion, and I think we could wrap this up tonight, but let me stop there. Pete, what's your thoughts on this?
I don't have any comments at this time.
Okay. Brad, any comments?
No comments. In my mind, I think that the building inspector is the main focus of this.
Diane, thank you, Brad. Diane, any comments?
No, I just had noticed in the pictures that Sam had taken that I didn't see any of the snow fencing up to delineate the area.
It is.
It's there.
It's there. Yeah, there really is nothing outside on their property. Quite honestly, it's really across the street where parking was. But
I'm good.
Mary, you are going to have the final say on this one.
Oh my goodness. I have one question, and that is just whether or not this change results in any needed change to the plan that was submitted. That's the plan of record. The plan of record did show some work in the entryway. Does the work that was done, does that fall within this same plan, or does it require a plan change? If it doesn't require a plan change, then I'm fine with going ahead with what Bob suggested.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Doug, you have an answer for that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I could, I actually went and met with the building inspector to discuss the situation. And of course, a topic of our discussion was whether or not this minor change had any impact on, making this a substantial renovation. And Mr. Bennett was clear that there was supposed to be a modification to the porch. It was just a little more extensive than it was supposed to be. But he said it didn't have any diminished and no impact whatsoever with respect to his analysis of the 50% rule, because we were well below.
Yeah, no, Doug,
and lastly, he did say the only thing he wanted was he wanted us to just modify the building permit so that the building permit showed the work that they did. That's all.
My question is more, is the
specific
footprint changed?
Oh, no.
Originally,
no.
Okay.
There was no footprint.
So
and in
that's
fact,
what
Mr. Bennett verified that as well. And
Yep.
we sent some photos to you folks that I know showed the porch. And Mary, they didn't step off of the foundation at all.
Okay.
Okay, team. So the consensus is we'll ratify the enforcement order. We'll add a condition, which was number 2 on 20 Northern. And again, that just gives Sam after the fact to be able to take a peek, see if there's anything else needed, and they can proceed with construction. Okay, so do we have a motion to amend, to ratify the enforcement order and add the condition? And I can read it. I guess I'll read it so that, but Sam, you're going to be able to cut and paste it from another document. So with the only condition, within 30 days of completion of construction, the respondent shall contact the conservation agent for a site visit, assessing the condition of the resource area to determine if any further action by the commission is warranted. If the conservation agent determines further monitoring of the resource area is required, the respondent shall submit to the commission for its review and approval a written monitoring and reporting plan prepared by a wetland professional with a relevant technical experience, detailing the actions the respondent shall take to monitor the resource area. The respondent shall implement such monitoring and reporting plan upon receipt of written approval by the commission of said plan. If the commission agent determines a restoration plan is required to restore, replant the resource area, the respondent shall submit to the commission for its review and approval a written replanting plan prepared by a wetland professional with relevant technical experience, detailing the actions the respondent shall take to restore the wetland resource area to its prior condition. The respondent shall implement such actions upon receipt of written approval. Now, prior to the, I guess, we will then include construction may resume so that there's clarity on that. Because Sam, you're happy with the fencing. I mean, I go by this property every day. It's a tight lot that couldn't be more accommodating following the rules on it. And again, I think on future ID applications, I would rather exaggerate what they're doing than underestimate, and we probably wouldn't even be dealing with this. So that's the motion. Do we have a motion based on that to ratify and amend the EO with that condition I just referenced?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All right. Roll call vote. All those in favor, say aye. Mary?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Brad?
Aye.
Diane?
Yes.
And Bob Connors votes yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Have a nice evening, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob, can I make a comment?
Yeah, please do.
Comment on that? Just
yeah,
my vote on
absolutely.
my vote on that project was different than the previous enforcement that where we had a similar situation occur, because I think that the work that was done was not substantially different than what was applied for in the
Right.
RDA. The determination that we issued wasn't very specific, but the material that they had submitted was very, so the work that was done was not that different than what was.
Yeah. I mean, Mary, for me, my trigger is if the building inspector requires a new set of plans or other documentation, then I think that opens the door where we have to, but I mean, again, that's just kind of how I'm looking at this stuff. But all right, any further questions before we move on to our, we have DEP file number 05014001 Middle Road to vote on an order of conditions, special conditions for the Governor's Academy for work to construct a walking path to provide access to the new Alphonse Science building. The public hearing is closed. I think the only thing we have to do is take a vote. Does the petitioner have any further comments? So Sam, do you have any comments on this? Are we all set on this one?
I would just like to note that the I made some revisions to the special condition draft yesterday. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get to it last week. I did the revisions yesterday, sent them out to the TGA group, and got some comments back this afternoon. But it appears that for the most part, I made a couple edits to it after that, added in a word and changed some language. But other than that, it appears that they are happy with everything, and I will share that so we can see it.
So grammatical corrections is basically not content that you've edited.
Yeah, it was basically, so in this findings section, this finding section, they just asked that I add deck into this in between boardwalk and area, which makes total sense to me. And they asked to have the language in 50F about erosion control inspections to match up with the condition, and I can't remember off the top of my head what number it is, but the condition here basically just saying that inspections would be done by the director of facilities or persons of equivalent qualifications, which makes sense to me. Other than that,
that was number 42, Sam.
Number 42, yes. So this is the finding section that I wrote up. This first bullet point was already in there. That's just the findings of what resources are on the property and the fact that the stormwater management standards are applicable. And then I added the following 3 to reflect the current conditions, and to basically provide a response to the comments that we received from DEP. First, to note why the commission did not feel that the boardwalk needed to be elevated at a 1-to-1 ratio, which is the typical ask that DEP has. It's the typical guideline. It is currently not at that. They wanted to keep it at 30 inches or less to avoid having to put a handrail up on the boardwalk for ADA purposes. But because of the great style with 60% openness for the decking on the boardwalk, and the existing shady conditions due to the existing canopy, there wasn't going to be any real change or detrimental impact on the wetland area as far as shading and water impediment goes. And then they made the DEP made comments about the wetland replication and noted that information needed to be added to that. But we did discuss that during the hearing process. And there was a proposal to use native wetland plants, which are going to be subject to final review and approval by commission or its agent. And that is outlined in condition number 69. They also made comments about stormwater compliance, and stormwater standards or stormwater management is, while it does get reviewed by the commission because it has to be, that is typically gone over more thoroughly through the planning board process, because the planning board are the ones who contract Joe Sawarka, the engineer who does all of our stormwater review. And he did do a review and he did provide comments. And a few things were revised as some of his comments, nothing that had any major impact or any impact really at all on wetlands. And pretty much everything was addressed through Joe's review. So that last finding just reflects that and notes that the project complies with the stormwater standards.
Okay, Sam, a quick question. We had reviewed and closed out really the comments on the special conditions, and I thought the purpose of continuing this for a couple of weeks was to give a chance for the applicant to reach out to DEP to address the technical comments that have been raised. And did that happen? And if someone from Governors could address that question.
I could speak to that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mark Beaudry from Civil Works. Yes, after the last meeting, we did in fact reach out to the DEP Northeast Regional Office and determined through Pam Merrill, who you may know, that we found out who the DEP analyst was, Danielle. Mary, you might be able to help me with pronunciation, but Miraconi. And
she's new. I don't know her.
Okay, but we found out that she actually received the file to be able to review it and comment on it like 6 days after the public hearing had closed. And so what she suggested was that she and I had a really good conversation, Danielle and I, and what she suggested was that we send along information to her, basically showing how we met essentially the performance standards or whatnot, and how she also did say that the guidelines for the one-to-one and all that could be overcome on it, with site-specific situations. And what I did was send her photographs of the work area, the wetland area, described what our thinking was relative to the boardwalk height, and wetland protection, replication area, stormwater. I sent her one of the standards, conditions 56 and 57 that the commission had drafted. We said that we respectfully request that the DEP accept the project as proposed, as the commission did. And what Danielle said was that this could be addressed by findings by the commission. And I did say that there was a reluctance for the commission to basically feel like they were the ones that had drafted these findings and whatnot. So what we did was I sent all that information to Danielle, but also had suggested I would then, because I had drafted all that and sent it to the DEP for consideration, that I would also share it with Sam and the commission, and which the DEP said was fine. And so essentially this information had come from the applicant. And as opposed to the commission actually drafting it. And I believe that Danielle then called Sam and they had a conversation, and it was, frankly, I think the DEP was, Danielle was reluctant to put any of this in writing, but it was, it was kind of left that, you know, I would share the information with Sam as well, and that it would be utilized to draft the findings. So I think that pretty much sums it up.
Okay, well, thank you, Mark. Sam, your comments on that? Did you talk to DEP or the analyst about this one?
Yes, I did. I spoke with
Okay.
Danielle as well.
Great.
She gave me a call too, to talk about this. And basically the conversation that I had with her, so they can't guarantee, or she can't guarantee herself, that DEP will not appeal the decision that gets made by the commission. But she did say that if the commission does feel that the performance standards are being met appropriately and stormwater standards are met appropriately, and that there is no detrimental impact to wetlands without the appropriate replication processes being met, that we can outline that in our findings based on information that we received from the applicant. And I think that based on the discussions that we've had during the hearing, that all of that has been addressed adequately and can be outlined in the findings.
Okay. Mary, your thoughts?
Am I muted? No. Okay. Yeah, this all seems fine. I just had a couple of minor comments that I wasn't able to get to Sam ahead of time. But on bullet item 3, I think it would be appropriate to add that the NC finds that the proposed 50 square to put the numbers on it. So 50 square foot wetland replication is appropriate to the site for mitigation of, I think it's 4 square feet of impact. That you put that in there specifically so they understand the magnitude of this replication area is very minor. And also that I think the monitoring requirement did not make it through. I could not find anything about replication monitoring, which DEP will require. So I proposed some language which says the site shall be subject to post-construction monitoring of the success of the wetland replication area prior to issuance of a certificate of compliance. Annual reports shall be submitted to the commission on or before December 1st of each year following construction. It shall include site photos and description of the site compliance with wetland replication standards, including 75% cover of wetland plant species and absence of invasive species. Basically 3 of the 4 plants have to survive. It's a low bar. So, but they're going to want to see that there's some requirement for monitoring, even if the governor does it themselves, and provides some photos and an email to Sam at the end of the year saying, yes, it's still there, it's still living. But that's one way that they'll use to try to say that the order may be incomplete. So,
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify one thing Mary said, Mr. Chair, it's actually 14 square feet.
Okay, 14 and 50. So that's, yeah, thank you. But if I think I'm fine with approval of this order of conditions as drafted with those minor changes.
Okay.
And I can make those changes. I'll make them tomorrow when I can actually get that done. I'm working on a really weird version of Word on my personal laptop, so I don't know if I can do it well.
I'll email you over the language.
That would be fantastic.
It's redlined in the document. So
okay. Thank you, Mary. Wendy, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that on Plan C3, there is stipulation for monitoring of the wetland replication area. So perhaps the same language could be used if you want to put it in the conditions.
Thanks, Wendy.
Sure.
Okay, let's go around. Brad, any questions on this one?
No, I'm good, Mr. Chair.
Pete, how about yourself?
No questions, thanks.
Diane?
No, this one goes above and beyond. I like it.
No, I know. Mary, would you like to make a motion?
Make a motion that we approve this order of conditions.
Okay, do we have a
Second.
With the modifications suggested, yes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Okay, roll call vote. All those in favor? Okay, so we have a motion to approve the order of conditions and special conditions as amended and presented for Middle Road Governor's Academy. We have a roll call vote. All those in favor say aye. Pete,
Yes.
Brad,
Aye.
Mary,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
and Bob Connors votes yes. Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening, and we will be with the planning board tomorrow night. Have a great night.
Okay, so next order of business, a request for determination of applicability. File number NCC 421 Salt Marsh, various locations. U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Mass Audubon, for work to manage invasive species. Sam, can you give us a quick overview on this?
Yes. So this is, it's actually a little bit of two different projects. The work that Fish and Wildlife is doing and Mass Audubon is doing on the refuge and in some of the properties surrounding it is for pepperweed control, invasive pepperweed, and they also wrapped up Phragmites control that was proposed a few months ago. Actually, I think it was sometime early last year by MVPC, I believe, for Phragmites control. They are planning on doing both in the basically wrapping up everything in one big filing to get everything all done at once. And I believe we have Liana here to discuss that. And we also have Heather.
Okay. One quick question before the petitioner can make a presentation. Are we voted? These are basically expiring RDAs that we're renewing, that these are all, they've been issued in the past?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
I know the Phragmites control is one that was expired. I don't know, Liana, was this one that Fish and Wildlife had been doing previously as well? Well, we can't hear you. You're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Yeah, Liana, for some reason, nowhere. No, we still can't hear you. Liana, can Heather start that while you're sorting through your technical? Okay. Heather, this is your big chance to pitch this project for us.
Hi, yes, so it has expired and we are refiling.
Heather, if you could just say your name and your affiliation, that'd be great.
I'm Heather McIntosh. I was previously a pepperweed technician last season. I will be the lead pepperweed technician this season, and I have helped compile this RDA.
Okay, well, if you could give us your best 10-minute overview of what you'd like to do.
I believe Liana might have a PowerPoint to share if she doesn't mind sharing it.
She's going to call in.
Yes.
Use your phone audio.
Technology every now and then. It's,
you gotta love it.
Oh boy. Well, we miss it desperately when it doesn't work the way it's.
While we're in a lull here, I need to abstain from this discussion because both Audubon and U.S. Fish and Wildlife are clients.
Okay.
Thank you.
Come through any second now.
Yeah. Now, Liana, you're on mute now. I don't know if you unmute, if that's going to, you'll get feedback probably.
She has to stay on mute or we'll get feedback. So
gotcha. Okay.
Theoretically. No, we still can't hear you.
Is it pound
Hello?
8? Oh, pound 6.
Oh, we hear you.
Oh, we can hear you now.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay. So for the record, my name is Liana D'Annunzio. I work for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Mass Audubon at Parker River National Wildlife Refuge. Do I have permission to share a PowerPoint?
You do.
Yes, you should be able to.
Thank you for the patience, everyone.
Happens to the best of us. Right. And we can see that.
Okay. This guy's smaller. Okay, so this RDA, as mentioned, is for the control of both perennial pepperweed and Phragmites in the town of Newburyport. So as mentioned previously, the last time we filed with the Newbury Conservation Commission was in 2020. We received a negative determination for the pepperweed work. The Phragmites work was not part of Fish and Wildlife's filing at that point. So we are refiling because it's expiring this year. And as Sam mentioned, we're also adding some Phragmites work that Merrimack Valley Planning Commission does on the refuge and surrounding areas in Newbury. Oh, there we go. Okay, so a little background on pepperweed. The areas where it invades are the edges of brackish and salt marshes, the banks of tidal creeks. It can grow in dunes and also along roadsides. So pepperweed spreads both through the roots, but also by the seeds, and the seeds can float, so they spread easily through waterways. So as you can imagine, if there's an infestation in the Great Marsh, it can easily spread throughout the entire marsh with all the tidal creeks. So it was realized back in 2006 that we needed a watershed level approach to control this invasive plant. And U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Mass Audubon kind of joined forces with some other partners as well to initiate the Great Marsh Perennial Pepperweed Control Project. So the work is throughout the Great Marsh, but tonight we're focusing on our work in Newbury. So for treatment of pepperweed, we use two different methods. One is mechanical control by hand pulling. So we have a team of about 5 pepperweed technicians that head out into the marsh in June and July and just pull a whole lot of pepperweed. We also have quite a few volunteers that help with the hand pulling as well. So since it can spread through roots, they have to make sure to get as much root as possible so it doesn't continue to spread through the root fragments. And it is also very important that we kind of contain and just correctly dispose of all of the pulled plant matter. So that involves putting it into contractor bags, we sun bake it, and then we send it to be incinerated. So the root fragments or any seeds don't continue the spread of the plant. The other treatment method is spraying with herbicide. It's a controlled spray using a backpack sprayer. You can see in the right-hand photo. I'll just do a quick overview of some of the locations. So this is kind of a big overhead view of the sites in Newbury. There are 1,187 sites total in Newbury, which sounds like a lot. But thankfully, as of last year, 40% of those are now free of pepperweed. And as you'll see in the map, the yellow points are sites that once had pepperweed but are now clear of it. The other dots represent other methods of treatment. So the pink is near eradication, so there's less than 20 stems, and those are usually hand pulled. The blue are hand pulled sites, red is sprayed, and white is untreated. There's always a small portion of our sites that unfortunately we can't get to every year because there's a lot of it, but we always strive to get to all of it. So here's just a close-up as well as some information on our permissions. Since we want to control throughout the entire watershed, that means we need to get permission from private property owners to also treat pepperweed on their land so it doesn't just continue to spread. So the green means we have permission. Red is we do not have permission. Pink is we're requesting new permission. Perhaps there's a new landowner or a new pepperweed site. So we have a really good pepperweed community in the basin. We're making some pretty good progress there as well. the Plum Bush area along Plum Island Turnpike and Plum Bush Creek. There's also sites within the Parker River National Wildlife Refuge, Plum Island Sound, and kind of the Pine Island area. Those are kind of a little close-up of the sites, and just a kind of an update on the project as a whole. As of last year, 43% of all the sites in the Great Marsh are now clear of perennial pepperweed. So that was a big accomplishment for us. As you can see, the success has been going up each year, but there was a big bump from 2021 to 2022, about 14% increase in clear sites. So that was a great accomplishment, and it's all thanks to collaboration with all the different partners, the landowners, and of course, getting permission from you all to make sure this work gets done. So on to the Phragmites portion of the show. So background on Phragmites australis, or common reed. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. It also grows along the edges of brackish and salt marshes and roadsides, often living in the same places as pepperweed. And it actually kind of crowds out pepperweed in some areas because that's kind of what it does. It forms dense monocultures, and it can really change the structure and the species composition of the marshes that it invades. So as mentioned before, Merrimack Valley Planning Commission has been leading the treatment and monitoring efforts, and they're doing this as part of the Great Marsh Revitalization Task Force. So this task force is made up of a bunch of different partners, both federal, state, local, and non-governmental organizations, and that includes U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Mass Audubon as well.
Okay, Leanna, let me stop you there and see if there's any questions from the commission at this time.
Oh yes, sure.
Thank you, Brett. Any questions at this time?
No, I'm very familiar with the work that goes on. No, thank you.
No, it's all great work. Pete, any questions at this time?
No questions. Great program.
Okay, and Diane, any questions?
Nope, I went through the filing. Thank you.
Yeah, no, very, very detailed filing and great work. Those of us that live on Plum Island get to drive by the marsh on a pretty regular basis and doing an excellent job. Leanna, if you could give us your best 5-minute wrap up on this, the night is getting long.
Oh yes, of course. Yep. So just a quick wrap up. These are just a couple maps showing the areas of Phragmites. There's about 3.6 acres of low density stands left to be treated. So just kind of a quick overview of where they are. Some best management practices. We always acquire landowner permission before treating on private property. We access sites by foot, boat, or low pressure vehicles to ensure we don't cause any damage in the areas that we're treating, especially since sometimes they can be sensitive. We make sure to prevent the spread of seed or root matter. Our herbicide applicators are all licensed pesticide applicators in the state of Massachusetts, and they strictly adhere by the instructions on herbicide labels. And some of those guidelines are such as not spraying in high winds, rain, or high tide, which could cause pesticides to move off site. And that's about it. Our goal is to stop the spread of these invasive plants and to eradicate them from the Great Marsh. And we request a negative determination. And thank you for your time, and here for any questions.
Okay, let's go around to the commission. Any questions, Pete, at this point?
No.
Brad, any questions?
Mr. Chair, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, Diane, any questions?
No.
Sam, any questions? Any wrap-up questions on your part?
Not from me.
Okay, and I have no questions. Sam, do we have any raised hands, or any other interested parties?
Not that I can see.
Mr. Chair, I put forward a motion to approve the NDA on this.
Okay, to issue a negative determination for salt marsh at various locations. That's your motion?
That is, sir.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. All those in favor? Pete,
Yes.
Brad,
Aye.
Diane,
Yes.
Bob Connors votes yes, and Sam, make sure you do show Mary as recused.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Liana.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night. We'll see you out in the marsh.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
It's amazing what they do to maintain the marsh and the amount of energy and work and just dredging through the marsh. My God, it's amazing. All right, public hearing, DEP file number 050-1402, 6 Olga Way, for work to demolish the existing structure and construct a new one on pilings. Sam, can you provide a project overview and a recommendation on this matter?
Yes.
Excuse me.
So this is, like Bob said, it's a tear down rebuild project. And sorry, I'm trying to pull this one up. And I apologize. I reviewed this one when it first came in, and then we were supposed to have it on the agenda at our last meeting, and unfortunately, due to an issue with the legal ad on my front, we had to postpone it to this week. And now I'm a little offbeat with this one, so I think I would like to defer to Matt Steinell from Millennium.
Okay.
He is here. I can't add him to the spotlight though, so he's going to be just a disembodied voice for everyone.
Okay.
Good evening, Matt Steinell from Millennium Engineering. I'll share my screen so everybody can see what I'm looking at. Everybody can see that now?
Mm-hmm.
Could you blow it up just a bit, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So on the left-hand side, I just wanted to point out this is the existing condition. The right-hand side is the proposed. I'm going to zoom in here on the left initially, and you can see the shaded area here is the footprint of the existing structure and decks that are attached to the building. And there's a light, kind of thin line overlay of what the proposed building is on top of that, just so you can see the relationship between the two structures, the existing and the proposed. The idea here was to try to put the new structure, which is a small single-family home sitting on piles with a very inadequate support foundation for this. It's like a crawl space underneath, and I believe there's like car axles and other odd support systems underneath this that is not up to code and needs to come out. The applicant originally wanted to do an addition to this, and because of the 50% rule, they were advised that they should look at doing a complete tear down and rebuild. And they went back to the drawing board with Luna Designs and came up with a new home for this property that would meet their needs. So again, left-hand side here is what's there today. What we're proposing to do is to construct a new single-family home on piles with the lowest horizontal support steel beam of the foundation above the floodplain. We are in AE 13, and so the bottom of the structure here you can see is proposed. Just let me jump to the next page here real quick. This is the structure here, and the bottom of the structure is proposed to be 2 feet above the ground minimum. That'll put us at 12.4 for the bottom of the steel, and then the first floor living area has to be above a foot above 13, so that is currently at 14.67. So the living space is almost 2 feet above flood at this point here. We've provided for new utility service connections here with a utility chase in the front. The existing sewer line will be rerouted and connected in here. The existing water line is unknown its location at this time, so we're showing the new one coming up through here just outside of the dune grass area in the front and connecting into the utility chase. And then we have a buried underground propane tank in the rear with the gas line coming into that same utility chase here. We're also showing there's a wooden walkway on the property, and a portion of that, or the majority of it here, is to be removed, with the front section going out to the road remaining in. And then that's to be replaced with a rollout style, either Moby mat or wooden rollout removable walkway to replace what was taken out. In addition to that, we've got some additional plantings proposed along the back here. We've got 2 chokeberry shrubs, as well as 2 of the Virginia rose shrubs along the back. And that's pretty much it. It's a pretty straightforward project as far as a single family replacement. On sheet 2 of the design, we've provided details for the utility connections, some information on the plantings straight from the Coastal Zone Management website from the list of approved plants. And we've also provided a construction barricade detail for the orange construction fencing, which we do show here, kind of along the edge of the driveway, coming up this way to protect this resource area over here, as that's all dune grass, very well thick planting in here. This is really, really nice. And I think that was it. I'm happy to answer any other questions the commission may have.
Okay, thank you. Let's start with Mary. Mary, any questions for Matt on this one?
Yeah, so only 2 feet above grade. Is there a reason why that seems lower than we typically see?
Well, typically a lot of the properties on the island, the applicants are trying to pick up additional parking. So they put the structure way up in the air and they attempt to park under it. In this case, we're not in a velocity zone, so the bottom of the structure doesn't have to be 2 feet above flood. Just the first floor living space has to be a foot above flood. And so to meet dune performance standards, we have to be a minimum 2 foot clearance. But to meet flood standards, we don't have to be even higher than that.
Gotcha. Okay. And so the expansion is going largely over an existing clamshell area, which is to be removed. I mean, that, you know, the part of the new footprint is covering an existing clamshell area. So I'm just looking for any other opportunities for plantings, because you have a larger footprint. So what is the increase in impervious area, or not that total footprint, I should say?
Sure. Believe it or not, it isn't that large of an increase because it's just a different shaped building.
Yep.
So you can see lot coverage here. The existing is 17.1% coverage and the new is 17.8%. Okay. So the actual footprint of the building isn't getting significantly larger, which is why I felt it was important on that existing conditions side of it here to show the outline of the new building over the existing. So you can see, you know, like we're not taking up the same footprint in the back here or even in the front here to a degree. You know, it's really kind of making it less of a box and more of a rectangle, and so you end up with a very similar size footprint.
Okay, so your pavers and your shower on the right side of the existing building are going to be removed, so there won't be a shower any longer. Is that correct? Okay,
correct.
And then your tanks are going to be removed, and are they being replaced somewhere?
The 2 liquid propane tanks are above ground, and we're proposing a buried propane tank here.
Okay, and that I know that we haven't allowed in the past is burying the propane tanks. We typically require them to be elevated on a platform to allow some migration. Typically, they're not allowed to be buried. So that would be one comment. And then also there'd be a fair amount of disturbance during the demolition and construction phase around building areas that might currently be vegetated. So I'm wondering if you have any planting plan for around the building once it's complete, other than those 4 shrubs that you showed. Is there dune grass proposed to be planted around this?
So yes, let me address both of your comments there. So we do have some information. I believe it's in our notes here, but I think it's also in our narrative where we indicate all disturbed areas are to be replanted. I think it's just in the narrative. I don't see it here. So all disturbed areas are to be replanted with native plants. So they currently have like a Scott's turf lawn style lawn out there that wouldn't be allowed. They'd have to come back in with something like a Pennsylvania sedge or with dune grass, beach grass, something that is off the coastal zone management website, or off of, I believe the New England Wetland Plants has a coastal grass mix that's also allowed. That's the first comment. The second about the propane tank, I permitted at least 4 in the last 2 years on Plum Island, of which 2 were in Newbury. So I do know that you have permitted buried tanks in the past. It's not against the rules. And so that's the reason we've gone this route, is to try to get it below ground. We would have that anchored on a pad with straps that would keep it from floating. And this would allow for grass to grow over top of it and for a more natural look once it's complete. Having propane tanks on an elevated platform, they just kind of stick out their eyesores. And so that's obviously not the direction I think the homeowners would prefer to go in.
Mary, let me just stop you for 1 second. Sam, you had checked with, we've always had this perennial question about propane tanks and anchoring them. You had a conversation with Peter and the plumbing inspector regarding tanks and the jurisdiction that's covered by that. Do you recall that?
Yeah. So and unfortunately, burying tanks actually never came up. I was under the impression that it actually wasn't allowed on barrier beaches and in floodplains like that because of the buoyancy concern. And the issues with, floodwaters coming in and all of a sudden the tanks becoming, dislodged from where they're located underground due to saturation. The conversation that I had with the building commissioner and with the plumbing inspector was that basically when you have propane tanks put out, they don't necessarily have to be elevated above grade, but they do have to be properly anchored to the ground, and that's in the building code. I would have to check with the plumbing inspector and with Peter about regulations in the code about burying tanks. But I was under the impression that burying tanks in floodplains was not allowed, and I think that's actually in the NFIP, the flood insurance program.
Well, why don't we? What I'm going to make a suggestion is, let's make a notation. That's a question to be asked. But one, do we have jurisdiction on that, or is that going to be covered under the plumbing or gas code? But I think it's a good question to get answered.
Yeah, we would have jurisdiction over that because it is work that's being done. It's in a wetland resource area. It's in the floodplain and everything. So it is something that's under our jurisdiction, especially if it's covered under the NFIP regulations.
No, I think let's just get it. Let's just. Yeah, I think let's get a definitive on that, because typically whether the tank is above ground or below ground, the ballast of the counterweight and how it's strapped. I mean, in all honesty, it almost makes more sense that if it's underground with the proper ballast, that it's less subject to really being impacted by storm surge or flooding.
I think that. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, but I think, Mary, I think it's a good question. Let's just get clarity on it if we can. Okay. Any other questions, Mary, at this time?
No. I think the point was more that to maintain it, if it has to be removed again, it's disturbance to the dune. That's right. What the concern is. They've gone to great pains to use, pilings to minimize the amount of, impact to the dune from the house construction. And it's similar, my understanding with DEP is that they don't want you burying utilities in the ground in a dune.
Okay, what flood zone is this in?
It's an AE.
AE 13.
Okay. Well, let's do this. Let's get a definitive answer on that and move on if we can. Mary, anything else for Matt on that?
That's all that I have right now. Thank you.
Okay, I'll circle back to Mary once we go through the rest of the members. Pete, any questions from Matt on this one?
No, yeah, I think the burying tanks might be under the jurisdiction of the fire marshal. So I think fire has to comment on that, of buried tanks.
Okay. Well, again, I think if we'll get a definitive on that either from the fire department or the building department. Brad, your comments on this one?
No comments, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Diane, your comments?
Nope, I had also just put a question mark on top of the propane tank, but I guess that's been beaten already, so.
Well, I think we got to just we need further information. It's a perennial question that always comes up. So I think we should just try to get it answered once and for all. All right. So Matt, where is this project before the ZBA? Have you already gone through ZBA on this, or is that pending?
That's pending. We filed with them. We anticipate being on the next agenda that's coming up. So if the commission has some questions that need to be addressed, we have time while we go through that process to get those questions answered. So we could request a continuance tonight and come back at the next meeting. And hopefully at that time, we will have gotten those answers from the building department.
Okay, so do you want to continue this to our, what's our
May
next
2nd.
meeting? May 2nd or May 16th?
I think May 2nd is where I would want to place us at this time. And
Okay,
if,
yeah,
if we don't have the answers we need, we can always push it off.
Okay. All right, do we have a motion to continue this public hearing?
We have to open it up to the public.
There's a hand.
Oh, excuse me. Okay, any raised hands at this time?
Yes, we have
say
Steve
Steve.
Mangan.
Steve, good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. This is Steve Mangan on 14th Street, Plum Island. And I would just note that both the state and the federal EPA have programs regarding underground storage tanks, which would apply to a propane tank. And underground storage of fuel is subject to some very specific construction details, which could involve cathodic protection or double lining of tanks which are underground. And whether it's under the purview of the Conservation Commission or someone else, I think we need to pay careful attention to putting a tank underground on Plum Island where saltwater intrusion during spring tides could be an issue, affecting the long-term integrity of the tanks and the associated piping. And that may mean that the construction details would be of significance to the Conservation Commission. In a general way, I don't think it's a good idea to put tanks underground in this general area on a barrier floodplain. And you might remember that there are many, many gas stations, including some that were on Plum Island that needed remediation because of leakage from these underground tanks. Now, in that case, I'm talking mainly about gasoline, but the same issues could apply to propane tanks that were not, properly constructed with cathodic protection or double wall facilities. So just asking you to be on the lookout. And with that, I'm done unless you have a question.
No, Steve, I think you've raised a good question that has been raised by Mary, and where this is likely to be continued tonight, it'll give us some time to further investigate. Steve, anything else before I move on?
That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Sam.
I just had a quick question, and I know this is probably a little just, weird things that go through my head. So right next door to this property, I believe it's town property right next door, or it's owned by someone. There's right across the street, there's a town facility.
Yes, it's a vacuum station for our sewer system.
Yeah, so the right next door on the same side of the street as this one right next door, there's like a big mechanical box of some sort. I don't know what it is or what's in it. Is there any anticipation of anything being impacted for that during the construction or during the installation of utilities? I know it's on the other side of the property, but just something I wanted to check in on.
Okay. All right. So actually, you know what, team? Matt, what I'm going to ask you to do is we'll vote to continue this, but at the next meeting, can you provide us with documentation that demonstrate that putting this tank underground is allowable?
Yeah, I think that's doable. Like I said, I've permitted a couple through this board and through Newburyport. I can think of one that was just put in the last 2 years. So even if it's just a matter of getting an opinion from the building inspector or gas inspector, plumbing inspector from the town, that it's permittable. I think that's pretty easy to do considering they've been allowing them recently.
Well, I think also it was a FEMA and National Flood. Do your homework, Matt, and be prepared to answer the question. We come back. We'll also be reviewing it on our end, but it's a lot easier double checking what you're going to submit than creating it from scratch. But okay,
Sure,
Sam,
absolutely.
Any other raised hands?
Not that I can see.
Okay. Any members have any final questions before we consider continuing this public hearing?
No.
Okay, hearing none.
Brad does have his hand up.
Oh, Brad, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brad.
Mr. Chair, I was just going to make a motion to continue this hearing to the May 2nd meeting.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Mary?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Brad?
Aye.
Diane?
Yes.
And Bob Connors votes yes. All right, so
Hey.
let's continue to
Matt.
2. Okay. Next public hearing, DEP file number 0501-336, 3 Newburyport Turnpike. All right. A request to amend the order of conditions issued on March 3rd, 2021 to include revisions to the approved bioretention area installation of a new water main across Route 1. Sam, can you provide a project overview and a recommendation on this one?
Yes. So the installation of the water main was, I believe, not originally in the original filing and approval. So that is new work that needs to be done. That's in the buffer zone area. The retention area, bioretention area is basically when they started doing the work on site. We did the pre-construction site visit a while ago for this one. And when they got in, the soils were basically nothing like what they thought they were, what they originally anticipated. So they had to kind of revisit what the plan was for that area. And I don't know enough about that. I'm not very well educated in that. So I'm going to let TJ cover the nitty gritty of that. But basically they are just coming in to get the amendment to include the new water main access or water main installation, and to basically just change the use, I guess, of the bioretention area.
Okay, is the applicant going to have someone present for them?
We do have TJ Melvin from Millennium.
All right, TJ, if you could give us your best 10 minutes recap of this to convince us we should approve it.
Absolutely. Good evening, TJ Melvin with Millennium Engineering here on behalf of the applicant. So as Sam had kind of discussed, this project was approved by the commission back in early 2021. Due to COVID, it kind of sat vacant for about 1.5 years. And then maybe within the last 6 months or so, construction's kind of started and started to ramp up. As part of the approval from the planning board, and I also believe it was in the order of conditions, we were required to perform soil tests with Joe Sawaka witnessing them. At the time that we performed those soil evaluations, we found really just junk fill on top of clay materials, where other test pits we had done were sand and free of fill. Really the biggest concern was we were proposing complete infiltration of the site. I can pull up the plans and we can kind of just walk through them quickly. This is a proposed mixed-use building. The first floor will be commercial / office, and the remaining floors will contain 14 residential units. We have parking out front. All of the stormwater pitches from Newburyport Turnpike towards the wetland at the east of the property. The stormwater is collected through trench drains, sent through contact CDS units for pretreatment, and we have it was an exfiltrating bioretention area to the rear of the building. So the additional test pits that we performed, again, showed kind of fill materials. And in speaking with Joe Sawatka, we came up with a game plan of kind of rerunning the calculations for the site. Initially, it was all done using A soils. Since then, we've switched it to D soils to account for the fill on top of the clay. I guess relative to the filing tonight, the footprint of the basin remains the exact same as was approved by the commission in 2021. We have not changed the plants that were proposed to be within there. Really, all that we've changed is the functionality of it, and we are not trying to utilize any infiltration of the basin itself. We're proposing an outlet structure that will mitigate the peak, the peak elevations of the storm events and discharging towards the wetland area to the east. That really is the bulk of the change relative to the previously approved plans. As Sam had mentioned, we are proposing a water main. Initially during the permitting process, so it's a little funky, but the water line in Newburyport Turnpike is owned by Newburyport DPS. They were originally requiring us to make a connection across the 4 lanes of Newburyport Turnpike and tying it into an existing main on the western side of the street. As construction got underway, we reached back out to DPS to get going on the Mass DOT permit. And at that time, they had suggested that there was an alternate route that they'd kind of like us to consider, which kind of led us here. So we are now proposing, again, instead of coming across Newburyport Turnpike to connect to an existing main, they have suggested that we run a water main along Newburyport Turnpike and tie into an existing crossing here. So we do show work, within close proximity to the wetlands. The limit of work would be within either the shoulder or the actual paved way of Newburyport Turnpike. And again, we show erosion controls. Really, the benefit for going this route, one, it's a much quicker installation time. As you can imagine, we'd have to kind of leapfrog across this to get this installed, and really just staying on one side of the road. Granted, it's more pipe and a longer length install can actually occur much quicker, as it's just one lane of traffic to be affected. So again, a real brief overview. I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
Okay, thank you. Mary, any questions?
I have been abstaining from all discussion on this site because I had some past involvement.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Pete, any questions on this one?
Yeah, we've seen this in planning.
Yeah, you've already seen this, right, Pete? Okay, Brad, any questions on this one?
No, I'm good. Straightforward.
Okay, Diane, any questions on this one?
No.
Okay, I do not have any questions. Sam, do we have any raised hands in the public, from the public at this point?
Not that I can see.
Okay. Do you, any further? Man, I'm having trouble speaking tonight. I must be getting tired. Any follow-up questions, Sam, on your part on this one?
Not from me.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve as amended.
Well, we've got to address a public hearing first, though, Brad.
Okay.
Okay. Do any members have requests for additional information or plan amendment or adding additional content to the notice of intent? I guess not to the notice of intent, to the amendment. If not, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved. Seconded.
Okay. All right, all those in favor say aye. Roll call vote. Pete?
Yes.
Brad?
Aye.
Diane?
Yes.
And Bob Connors votes yes. Mary is abstaining. Okay. Now,
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
okay, now do we have a motion? Do we want to entertain a motion to amend the order of condition?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Pete?
Yes.
Brad?
Aye.
Diane?
Yes.
And Bob Connors votes yes. All right, thank you. All right, our last public hearing, DEP file number 1403, 170 Orchard Street, for work to construct a 4-lot single-family residential subdivision with 500-foot roadway, utilities, stormwater management features, and common driveway. Sam, can you give us a project overview on this one?
Yep, so this is a relatively small subdivision that's going in. It is on a historically agricultural site, which is outlined pretty well in the narrative. Mary and Pete will probably remember doing the extension for the ORAD last year with Bill Manuel, where we made some revisions to the wetland lines and extended the ORAD to add a couple years on to accommodate the filing of this notice of intent. They're looking to do 4 single-family lots, the roadway, stormwater management. It's a, relatively speaking, compared to some other subdivisions that we've looked at, really small. But I will let Bob cover the details of this one.
Okay, good evening, Bob. Give us your name, address.
Yeah, so it's Bob Griffin, Griffin Engineering, 495 Cabot Street, Beverly, Mass. And I'd like to share my screen if I can. Can you see the blue box?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Okay. So 170 Orchard Street is this parcel with the star on it. You're right. You've been here. You're familiar with the site a little bit. It's about 20 acres in size, and of that 20 acres, I think about 3.5 are wetlands, and about 17 are uplands. 2017, there was a proposal called Forge Village. There was an OSRD plan, and I think there was a conventional subdivision plan, each of which are going to have, I don't know, 15 or 17 lots in it or something like that, with some access off of Pearson Drive, at least with one of the proposals. So here's our site. You can see the agricultural use. The last few years, it's been hay or corn. And we'll talk about this a little bit more as we go along, but our hope is that we can continue the agricultural activity continuing. And in the short term, we're getting near planting time. And I believe that the landowner is going to have the corn planted again for this year. So there'll be no construction activity happening this year, at least until the corn is harvested, is my understanding. So that's sort of where that's at. There's no flood zones on the property. You can see to the left, to the west of the property, here's this perennial stream. It casts a 200-foot riverfront line into a portion of the site along sort of the western side here. There's no work proposed in any riverfront area. So we're not disturbing that. Here's our 2022 ANRAD plan. So that it was broken up in sort of 2 pieces, sort of the right and the left. This is the right piece with Orchard Street at the right side of the plan here. Number 158 and number 172 Orchard Street, the 2 residences near the entrance here. Here's our 50-foot wide strip of land providing access to the agricultural area now. This area on this sheet is sort of where we're working. And we have basically up until the match line here, I think it's about 900 feet from this line to this line. And then sort of northwest of match line A, there's no proposed work. So we don't need to sort of go beyond that, but I'll show you the other half of the ANRAD plan just so you can, just to refresh your memory. The curly line on the plan is the limit of existing limit of clearing. So this is the edge of the agricultural area. The little marsh symbol is the wet area. So the probing through the agricultural fields define the limit of the wetland, even in the agricultural field. And then here's our 100-foot buffer zone line outside of the BVW. And here, this line that sort of runs diagonally across the lower part of our property is the 200-foot riverfront boundary. The grades are gradual, elevation 60, 58, 56 at the top of the page here. I think our lowest elevation down here is around, 40, 42, something like that. Maybe 46 on the property, and then it drops down a little bit below that off the property. So, but about a 5% slope on most of the land, basically sloping from east to west. This is the second half of the plan, sort of the left side. And again, no activity in this area. Here's again, another wetland encroaching into the agricultural area here with a buffer zone line. The 2022 ANRAD had, I think, A through G wetland series flagged, but A through B, A and B are the only ones that sort of affect the proposed work I'll be describing. Here's match line B, and here's the end of the property out here. Here's an aerial photograph. It's a little hard to see the wetland line, but you can see the dots at the corners of where the flags were placed. And there's the 100-foot buffer zone line there. There was some ruins of an old building over in this area here, and we're going to propose some stormwater management activities in that area there. Here's that 200-foot riverfront line again. That's the western or northwestern portion of the property again. No work in that area. So here's our proposed layout. We have a 500-foot long cul-de-sac. So from Orchard Street to the end of the cul-de-sac here is 500 feet. And then we have a common driveway, bringing it out about another 500 feet. It's a little less than 500 feet, but basically 500 feet from the circle to the end of the driveway here. The lot numbers are 1, 2, 3, and 4, proceeding from right to left as you're looking at the plan. And again, it was a stormwater management area, which I'll show you in a minute in this area here. Lot 4 ends up with most of the property, 16.6 acres of land. Lots 1, 2, and 3 are about 1 acre each. I think 1.2 acres per lot 3 here. We've given you the whole set, the same set that we're giving the planning board, so that everyone's got the same plans, and I'm happy to talk about anything on the plan. But I would point out that the CONCOM jurisdiction sort of ends at the 100-foot buffer zone line, which is, so the roadway proper is not in the CONCOM jurisdiction. The common driveway is. All of the house construction is outside the CONCOM jurisdiction. All the septic systems are outside the CONCOM jurisdiction as well. The common portion of the common driveway is about 300 feet. It's about 490 feet again to the end of the driveway. The plan is for Fields Way to be a private way, so there'll be a homeowners association formed of the 4 lot owners, and they'll obviously share in the costs of maintaining Fields Way and snow plowing and all that kind of stuff. We've had, I think, 1 or 2 meetings with the planning board so far. Planning board hired Mr. Sirwatka to provide a peer review that came out in February, and we responded to it in March. And I think we got a favorable letter out of Mr. Sirwatka in the middle of March. So I don't think there's any remaining peer review issues. The Board of Health witnessed our septic test. We haven't designed the septic systems, to great detail yet, but we know we've got adequate soil in all of those septic system locations. We'll have underground electric, telephone, cable. We'll have a water line with a couple hydrants on it coming in as well. I'm going to zoom in on the site layout. Well, here's the aerial. Again, you can see where the 4 lots are. The limit of our work is the limited work line, and the erosion controls are the line with the two X's on it, sort of on the downhill side, sort of encircling all of our work area. So I think when you cut up the site in this manner, you leave, you know, a pretty good sized agricultural field here and here. This one obviously goes on to Mrs. Bulgaris's property over here, so, but and to the, obviously to the northwest of Lot 4, there's a lot of land available that continue the agricultural use, and so we think that can continue. If for some reason you didn't want the agricultural use to continue, or that we couldn't find somebody to continue the agricultural activity, I think we could, you know, reseed it relatively easily with some erosion control mix or something like that, and just let it go. But right now, we'd like to continue that activity. We think it's good for the town, good for the neighborhood, and good if you like to eat corn.
Bob, Bob, let me do this. Can I put a hold on you for a minute? Let's just go around so we have any questions up to this point.
Okay.
Sam, actually, I see your hand's raised, so why don't we start with you? You're on mute, Sam, if you're.
Sorry about that. So I did note, I think I noted in the, when I sent out the agenda that we got some DEP comments. And the comments that we got were just that the existing agriculture field is being developed and details should be provided on how the existing agricultural field and resource areas and associated buffer zone would be restored and stabilized, which I think is pretty much covered by Bob's description, is that their plan is to continue using that as an agriculture area, and if the plan is to stop that activity, that it'll be reseeded. Bob, is there a plan, or is there an outline of what that plan might look like in the future? Actually, I don't even really know if we can cover that if it's not something that's actually happening right away. But it may be something that we want to consider adding into the special conditions as a perpetual condition, maybe, that if at any point they do decide, or they do, you know, whatever happens, that they do end up having to cease agricultural activities, that area would have to be stabilized and reseeded appropriately.
Yeah, I mean, clearly we're showing a limit of work line, which to me is, you know, everything to the left of it or to below it is the agriculture activity. But if for some reason in the future that proposal changed, then I suppose that's something that, you know, potentially comes back to the Concom, particularly to the extent that that's within the buffer zone. You know, all of the agricultural land is pretty much contained within Lot 4. So there's really, you know, only one landowner that we have to deal with this condition. I think lots 1, 2, and 3, they're just, you know, there's no real opportunities for agricultural activities in those parcels. So that would be our hope, is that, again, we can continue it, and that we can, you know, just sort of cordon off Lot 4, you know, agricultural versus non-agricultural.
Okay, thank you. Mary, any questions at this point on this project?
Just a couple, I think this is a very reasonable development for this site. I like that the houses are all outside of the buffer zone, and that the roadway itself kind of acts as a barrier between the development and the wetland, which is the agricultural field. I think that maybe some fencing on that Lot 4 limit of work or something to demarcate between what's going to be maintained as yard and lawn versus what's going to be maintained as agricultural field might be appropriate. I think that if we could put a condition on any future order of conditions that would say that if the agricultural use is discontinued, that the agricultural exemption that goes with the activity of agriculture in a wetland, or farming in a wetland, that we would have to have a plan submitted of what kind of cover crop was going to be planted to, you know, make sure that the area was stabilized once the farming was completed. And then my other comment just has to do with stormwater management. And I know that with 4 or fewer lots, you're right on the cusp of full requirements for stormwater management, but I see a big basin near the cul-de-sac, and I don't know if that's just for the cul-de-sac and the roadway, or if it's accepting any of the runoff from the driveways. So Bob, if you could answer that question, that would be helpful.
Right, so here's the stormwater area, and you're right, we've got some catch basins here on the road. We've got some drain inlets, so that as the water flows from sort of east to west, it's going to hit the roadway, it's going to go into these drain pipes and get conveyed to the stormwater wetlands. Same thing over on this side. The common driveway ends up being a barrier to stormwater flow. So we're carrying water all the way to this pipe here, getting it into the stormwater basin. Over on this side, we really can't get it all the way over there. The grades just don't allow it. So we've got a culvert kind of pipe underneath the common driveway here to convey water from this side to that side. As we get down towards Orchard Street, the grades are too low to get into the stormwater management system. So we're meeting the stormwater management standards to the maximum extent practicable. We've got a couple of infiltration basins in between the two residences there. And the portion that we can't get into the infiltration basins, again, because of topography, will run out onto Orchard Street and just get into the regular drainage system of Orchard Street. I think we actually have a reduction in the amount of water going to Orchard Street. We'll zoom in a little bit here. There's the stormwater wetland. This is a pocket wetland. And we did provide the planning board with a stormwater management report. We showed how the project conforms to all the stormwater management standards. Mr. Sawatka reviewed the stormwater management report, and I think again we've addressed all of his comments there. But here's the two catch basins, and the dry wells are here, and then this is the portion of Orchard Street that you just can't catch because of topography.
So I would just ask that we could get copies of the stormwater report and the comments from Joe Sawatka. That would be informative. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Mary.
Anything else? Thank you.
Okay. Pete, any questions at this time?
Yeah, this will actually be for planning tomorrow. We probably have some more discussions. So.
Okay. Thank you, Pete. Brad, any comments at this point?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I wonder whether or not the applicant thought about putting that private driveway outside the buffer zone and either reducing it from 4 lots to 3 or pushing the housing back towards the, I take it, the north side of the property.
Yeah, so, we're not looking for any waivers from regulations as part of this development scheme. We think that, 4 is really, making a subdivision work with 4 is challenging enough as is. I don't know that even with 3 would be economically possible. And I don't see, what are we trying to get to again? We're trying to get the driveway out of the buffer zone. Is that it?
Mr. Chair, that was my question.
I see. Yeah. I mean, I think that, we have a reasonable amount of, living space around all 4 of the houses. I think the construction of a driveway in a buffer zone is certainly an activity that's allowed under the Wetland Protection Act. We're certainly mitigating for any impacts through the use of erosion controls and our improved stormwater management practices. So I think, we did give it a good shot as far as trying to come up with a layout that had a minimum amount of activity in the buffer zone, but we were unable to do that.
Okay. Brett, any other questions at this time?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Diane, any questions for Bob at this time?
No.
Okay. Team, I've not seen this property, and I would think that a site visit would be in order for those of us that haven't had a chance to view this property. What's our thoughts on that, Diane? Would you be interested in a site visit?
I would, except I'm going to be gone next week. So I don't know if I would be able to go next week.
Okay. Brad, would you be interested in a site visit?
Yes, that would be informative, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. So, Bob, obviously we're going to request a site visit, and which would require obviously a continuation of the public hearing tonight in order to do that. I'm actually heading out of town Friday, but I'm back by the beginning of the week. Diane, you're gone all next week?
I'm gone through the 29th. Late on the
Okay.
29th, so
That's 2 weeks.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 22nd through the 29th, I'm gone.
Okay. Well, you know what? Before we decide on a site visit, let's do this. Sam, are there any raised hands from the public on this matter?
No.
Okay. All right. So Diane, you're going to the 29th. Our next meeting is May 2nd. Bob, what's your status at the planning board? You're going to be before them tomorrow night?
That's correct.
And when do you see when will you pray for conclusion before the planning board? Or,
If my prayers were answered, it would be tomorrow.
okay.
Monday, the 1st?
Yeah, that works for me. Okay. All right. We're going to need to continue this, Bob, to May 2nd. Yep. So if you want to request a continuation.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Do we have a motion to continue this public hearing until May 2nd, 2023?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Mary?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Brad?
Aye.
Diane?
Yes.
And Bob Connors votes yes. We'll tentatively schedule this site visit for Monday, May 1st at 8:30.
Did you want to have it staked out, or is it staked out, Bob?
We have placed some stakes along the center line of the road, and I'm certainly open to staking out other locations. It's just that I know we are getting close to the seeding, to planting time, and I just don't want to screw up the guys planting. But I'll be there, and I'll make sure that there's enough stuff staked so that we can figure our way around. And you said so 8:30 in the morning on Monday?
8:30 in the morning work for everybody? I mean, we can tighten this up. We get some time, but tentatively 8:30 in the morning. Sam, does that work for you?
That would be perfect for me.
Okay. All right. Well, so tentatively 8:30 May 1st for a site visit. If we have to change that, then we can change it, but we'll leave it at that. All right. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you all very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bob.
Yep. You know what, team? It is now 9:22. I would suggest that, Sam, do you have any other business? The discussion regarding the Mass Audubon. Actually, I think you, me, and someone from the Audubon, we could have a chat with that offline and then report back. There's just been a number of questions and some confusion about fencing signage going up for nesting on private property. And I just think having some clarification for people will be beneficial for everybody. So I
got sorry.
I had asked Sam just to put this on as a reminder, but I think having a quick meeting, Sam, with who I'm not sure who's in charge of the monitoring on the nesting monitoring, but just to
we actually Lyra Brennan is the person who has been doing the correspondence with the town about that, and she is on tonight. If we're interested, I have some correspondence from her as well regarding that. And I think there was some correspondence, or at some point there was some correspondence with town council, not from me. I don't know who reached out to them. But they've reached out to me. Unfortunately, the call that I got from Ryan Winter last week was on Friday and I didn't see it. I was gone all weekend, and I got an email late this afternoon from Lisa Mead as well about that, that they haven't had a chance to really look into it, but I do have some correspondence from Lyra about that.
Well, you know what, I think doing this offline, and then we can report back to the commission if there's a question. Brad, question?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if you could indulge by including me in that discussion, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, no, certainly. I think you know what, we all want to work together. I think having clarity to what all the how it goes on, how it happens, the mystery is that communication, we just got to work on that so people understand what's going on. And I think if the Audubon understands what private property owners are expecting prior to someone entering their property and putting up barriers or signage, I think we can add some clarity to that. But I think overall, it's all good stuff. Anything else? Go ahead, Sam.
I do have one quick update.
You're extending our meeting here, by the way. It's
I promise it'll be really quick.
I got my finger on the leave button here.
I know it. It's
so most of you guys should probably remember the project out in the salt marsh that the Marine Biological Labs is doing, the research station that they have up.
Yeah.
Inca Forbridge provided the seasonal report about that, and everything looks fantastic. All of the vegetation looks great, and it withstood the winter amazingly. The boardwalk is still perfectly in place, and they haven't had any issues since that modification got approved, and we are looking forward to seeing their next report. And if anybody does want to see that report, I would be more than happy to forward it on to you guys.
Okay, let's go around. Any wrap-up questions, Pete? Any questions? I mean, you're just probably dying to get back to whatever you're doing out there in New York.
I'm very comfortable, thanks.
Okay. Brad, any last comments for the night?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Okay, Diane, any comments?
No, poor Pete has planning tomorrow. Good luck, Pete.
And Mary, how about yourself? Any closing?
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn? See, it's so
moved.
This meeting has gone on so long I can barely talk anymore. Do we have a second? Okay, roll call vote. All in favor? Mary,
yes.
Pete, Brad,
aye.
Diane, and Bob Connors all vote
aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, Sam.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.